Aloha and welcome. We're so happy to have you tuning in to this presentation called Steering Your Child to Lifelong Success, Tips for Parents and Families of Children with Dyslexia. I'm Margaret Higa, and I'm the Executive Director of the Hawaii branch of the International Dyslexia Association, or HIDA for short. Also with us this evening is Jennifer Leowiki-Drino, and she is a HIDA board member and a current chair of our Public Awareness Committee. And then Lori Shikuma, who will be our presenter, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Lori in a sec. HIDA's mission is increasing awareness of dyslexia in our community throughout Hawaii, providing support for individuals with dyslexia, their families and educators, promoting teacher training, and improving literacy for struggling readers. And this presentation is just one part of what we do to fulfill that mission. And now I'd like to introduce you to Lori Shikuma, who is our presenter for today. Lori is a good friend of HIDA and a past HIDA board member. She's also a fellow in training with the Orton Gillingham Academy and a structured literacy dyslexia specialist with the Center for Effective Reading Instruction. Lori is an Orton Gillingham tutor, a reading interventionist in public and private schools, and the mother of 2 dyslexic children. Thank you so much, Lori, for presenting. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Margaret. And I have to tell you, I think my highest credential is that I have 2 dyslexic children. I think I could relate and understand the journey parents go through. And with my many years of work with dyslexic kids, I understand the child's journey as well. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to do this virtually. Back in the day before the pandemic, we used to go out into the community to speak to parent groups. We'd go into schools, Margaret and I would go, other board members and I would go, present at conferences. But it will be nice to have this virtual so anyone could see it anytime. So let's start. We have a very simple objective for this webinar, and that is to give practical tips that you could use today to help your kids with dyslexia or other reading impairments. I want to point out this yellow line at the bottom. We know that you know your child best. Every child is unique. Every dyslexic child is unique. So trust your instincts. All these tips might not be good for your family, and you will know that. So that is going to be on every tip slide, and we know that you know your child best. The first tip, and it might seem simple, but find out all you can about dyslexia and any other co-occurring learning differences that your child might have. For example, we know that with dyslexia, ADHD occurs 30 to 40% of the time. So they have dyslexia and ADHD. There's things like dysgraphia, dyscalculia. Know your child. Learn everything about all of these different things so that you understand their profile and their needs. This also might seem simple, but I remember being overwhelmed with all the information out there about dyslexia and other learning differences. So I wanted to narrow it down and give you practical places to go as you learn about dyslexia. And I'll go through them one by one. The first, hopefully you already know because you're at this webinar, is the HIDA website. And it's such a great resource for us here in Hawaii. I wanted to point out this great book that is available on the website if you didn't know it. It's called A Resource Guide About Dyslexia for People in Hawaii. And it was written by a longtime HIDA board member, Kathy Ferguson, who was also a UH professor. But it's something that's just a treasure to have. So this is the HIDA website. Under resources, it's called the Resource Guide, and you just click there and you have access to, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna make you a little dizzy here. You have access to this full 170-page book. So not to make you dizzy again, but I wanted to try to maneuver to the table of contents to give you an idea of what's in here. Starting out with facing your fears. When I first found out my kids were dyslexic, that was my first emotion. But just taking you through the journey, frequently asked questions. Where should you start? Where should you go? What do your kids need? So this is such a valuable resource, again, available on the HIDA website. The next resource that hopefully you know about is understood.org. And this is such an interesting website built by a mom and a dad who had a kid with multiple learning differences, and their struggle to find information, credible information about all those things was really difficult. So let me take you to the understood.org website, and it's very understated. This is their top page, cover page. So it's very understated, but they have a great feature that you could just search for what you need. So if you, oops, if I could spell dyslexia correctly. Here are some things that come up when you search dyslexia. Questions from families answered. How helpful would that be? Preschool, signs you might see of dyslexia. High school, signs you might see. Dyslexia success stories. This is so valuable for us as parents to know about these success stories, as well as our kids. So that's a great website that I always recommend. And then there's the big one, the International Dyslexia Association website. It is packed with information that is so helpful, but it's so packed that I want to point out a couple things to help you maneuver through it. And then I also want to bring your attention to what IDA is terming structured literacy. If you know about the methods to help our dyslexic kids learn to read, Orton Gillingham is like the grandfather. And from the grandfather, Orton Gillingham, these other names occurred, like the Wilson reading system is based on Orton Gillingham, Slingerland, Spalding. So in an attempt to make it more clear and easy for everyone, IDA termed all of these methods that work for our dyslexic kids as structured literacy. But before we get there, let me just show you the website. This is the International Dyslexia Association website. And under families, there are these fact sheets. If you haven't seen them, you have to check them out because they're just what they say, a sheet or two based on research that are facts about all of these interesting topics. Accommodations for students with dyslexia. I don't know if you could see my pointer. Advocating for students with dyslexia in public schools. How helpful would that be? So many other topics, please check it out. But there's also fact sheets on structured literacy. And I'm sorry I can't show you the full page, but it's a full page of exactly in words what structured literacy is. But they also have wonderful infographics on the IDA website. And this is one that explains in pictures, which is helpful for people like me who learn better through pictures, it's not, structured literacy has two components. Yes, there are these certain elements, semantics, syntax, which are more, which is sentence structure, grammar, vocabulary, morphology, the parts of word. But it's not just all of this stuff, vowel teams in a certain order. It's all structured literacy is also the way that they get the instruction in those topics. It's always explicit. It's always systematic, building a foundation and working on it. Cumulative, our kids need lots of review to retain these things, to build on their skills. So I encourage you to understand, as a parent of someone with dyslexia, how our kids learn to read. So parent tip number 2, and I would say this is one of the most important, is make sure that your child reads. It just is critical. It doesn't matter what they read. What matters is that they're interested in it and they want to read it. A lot of times parents ask me, well, is it okay if they're reading comic books or graphic novels? Yes, if that's what they're interested in, if that's what they're reading. Sports, if they're interested in sports, sports magazines are great. Audiobooks also count, and they're essential to bridge gaps for our kids. From audiobooks, they will get rich vocabulary, They will get the complex sentence structures that they need to understand text, and they'll get a lot of background knowledge. And we know from research that that our children need all of those things to more fully comprehend text. There are a few places you could get audiobooks. It's really easy. Bookshare.org is a free place for audiobooks for students who are have a disability. And the reason for that is these are current copyrighted works, a lot of them. And so the authors allow audiobooks of their works to students with documented disabilities. Learning Ally is another great place to get audiobooks. The difference, and it's much better now, is previously Bookshare had a lot of computer generated audiobooks, with that computer language, which my kids didn't really like, which is why we went to Learning Ally. I had a Learning Ally family subscription for many years. And if that works for you, that's a great resource. But I have to tell you, Hawaii State Public Library has a wealth of audiobooks that are available. Figure out the system, reserve them. If they're not available, then my family must have listened to hundreds of hours of Hawaii State Public Library audiobooks. So really recommend it. Because the cost of not reading is so high. And our kids who struggle in reading might not like to read. It's not all kids. My daughter loves to read, but a lot of dyslexic kids don't like to read. And this is the ramifications for them not reading. If you could see this, a typical, like my kids, they would read 5 minutes a day. And so that would equal 282,000 words per year, right? But compare that to a typical reader who is reading at least 20 minutes, and I would say 20 minutes is low. They're getting exposed to 1.8 million words per year. What a difference, 1.8 million, 282,000 for people reading only 5 minutes. This chart is from Sally Shaywitz's book, Overcoming Dyslexia, the first edition. And I had this on my refrigerator for many years, just to remind us about the importance of reading. Reading to your kids count. So read to them as long as they'll let you. Audiobooks count, graphic novels, anything that they're interested counts, because the cost of not reading is just too high. So we as parents must make sure our kids read. Parent tip number 3, know that if your child is documented with dyslexia, they have rights under legislation. These are the pieces of legislation, IDEA and Section 504. And to me, it's just remarkable to think about that it was only 50 years ago that students with disabilities weren't guaranteed education. There were sometimes, if you're lucky, separate schools for students with disabilities. And if you think back further, only wealthy people could hire special teachers to come work with your child if they had disabilities. Think of Helen Keller, right? Helen Keller was so fortunate because her parents were able to hire Annie Sullivan, and then look what miracles happened from that. So these pieces of legislation are really critical. They're federal legislation, so that means that they apply to federally funded public schools and public charter schools. But no matter where your child goes, public school or private school, they are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits any kind of discrimination based on disability and prohibits lack of access. So important things for parents to know. Some people think that, providing accommodations, helping our dyslexic kids is unfair, it's cheating. It really is not. I love this graphic because it's just providing a level playing field. So in the first picture, this little kid can't even see anything, cannot see the game. But with one box, this kid can. With 2 boxes, even the littlest kid can see the game. And that's all the accommodations are. It's just leveling the playing field. These are terms that you might hear. Formal accommodations are those that are legally provided by an individualized educational plan in public schools or a 504 plan. But informally, and we'll give you a great tool to use, any parent or student can request reasonable accommodations no matter what school they go to. Parents should understand, for a long time, I just let my kids understand the technology part, but really parents need to understand how technology could help and support our dyslexic kids. 10 years ago, I mean, we're so fortunate to have the technology that we have now, because 10 years ago, even 10 years ago, I, as a parent, had to deal with this cumbersome, very expensive text-to-speech Kurzweil program, right? But now everything is available easily on apps. Any computer will read the text on the screen. So get to know what you can do to support your kids through technology. Even AI, like Alexa. I always tell the story of my son. He has an Alexa in his room. And sometimes I would hear him go, Alexa, how do you spell blah, blah, blah? Or Alexa, what does ACCOM, and he'd spell out a word, mean? So things like that, we don't think about often, but they could really support our kids. And then this last point about ATRC, that's the Assistive Technology Resource Center. And it's actually a national organization, federally funded. And we have one here in downtown Honolulu. I went with my kids there several times. One great thing that they offer is kind of a try before you buy. There's a lot out there. And so you could kind of check out like a library book, an iPad loaded with various apps, and you could check them out before you buy them. So it's a great place to check out ATRC. Parent tip number 4, and this is so important. Reading is one part of life, but our kids can be so successful in other parts of life, and it's important that we nurture those as well. You know, some of our kids are so talented in sports or in music. Art is a special area of excellence with our kids. They can understand robotics, some kids, and some kids, even though they struggle in reading, they could be the whiz kid in math. So important that we give them those successes, that we build those successes that kind of balance out their struggles in reading, and so critical in maintaining their self-esteem and self-confidence. This is one thing I just wanted to mention when thinking about your child's strengths. For those parents who have formalized testing, standardized testing from either schools or from a psychologist, an independent evaluation, you get these reports, and they're so hard to understand the first time around. But I really encourage parents to try to understand what those reports tell you, because they identify cognitive and academic strengths that your child has. This is the book. It's by Melissa Farrell, who's really an expert on assessment, and Peter Wright, who's an attorney. And I just wanted to share this success story about Peter Wright, and this is his website. When he was in early elementary school, he was deemed not able to be educated, not able to be educated. But my OG mentor, Diana King, worked with Peter Wright, and now he's like probably one of the top experts on special education law in our country. So I really recommend his website and his books. Parent tip number 5. It's critical that our children understand their strengths and challenges, because this is the first step in allowing them to understand how to self-advocate. So I once had a parent come up to me, what does self-advocate mean? You know, all these new terms that, you know, Margaret and I and Jennifer are used to hearing, but it just simply means that they are able to ask for what they need. They understand their strengths, they understand their challenges, and they know who. This is an important question. Does your child know how and who to ask for help when they run into difficulties? And this is where they need our help sometimes, but it depends on age. So younger kids, if they're running into difficulty, you're the first person they go to, and the class teacher, right? But as they get older into middle school, high school, There are a multitude of other people that they could go for help, counselors, academic deans. Some schools have entire student support departments, I guess you would call them. So it's important that they know that that is there, and when they need help, they could go there. But there is even a lot of support available in colleges. My daughter's in college now, and there, because she has a learning disability, she can go and get tutoring. There's a tutoring center that's available to her. There's a writing center that's available to her, and I think probably all students. But you know, if you have to submit a big paper, there are strict standards of citations and whatever, and the writing center will actually proof her paper for her. So all along a child's journey in school, there are other peoples who can support them, but they need to know when and who to ask. This is a great self-advocacy card that I wanted Jennifer to talk about.
Thank you. So this card was originally created by the Oregon IDA branch, and they allowed us to adapt it for Haida. So this is a great tool to have your child start to advocate for themselves. They can fill this out, and they can write what their accommodations are, just check them off, and bring this to a teacher and start the conversation. So if they're not sure, how do I approach my teacher? They can have this card with them, take it in and share it with their teacher and get that conversation going. Or another way to use it is if you have a substitute and you walk in and you're like, oh no, so many children with dyslexia have horror stories surrounding a substitute not understanding their accommodation. So they could carry extra of these in their backpack, and the substitutes in the classroom, they can just bring it up to them and quietly hand it to them. And that way it helps the substitute out also to know who's in their class on that day. So this is a great tool. And it can be downloaded from the Haida website. Just print it out.
Perfect. What a great tool.
Yes.
And the last, thank you, Jennifer. And the last tip, number 6, is again, look on the bottom, this yellow thing. You know your child best. Trust your instincts. Or help your child understand dyslexia or not. Every kid is different. These were worries in my mind when I first found out that my children were dyslexic. I wondered, should I even tell them that they're dyslexic? Will that be a label, a negative label that will follow them? Will they be ashamed? Should I disclose this to this new private school that I am applying to, they're applying to? How about college? These were all going through my mind. But again, every kid is different. My daughter didn't want anyone in the beginning to know that she was dyslexic. Mortified about people finding out. My son, however, wore his dyslexia on his sleeve. He would talk to anyone about his dyslexia. So even within families, there are differences, and you as parents decide what's best for them. I would say, however, that my daughter eventually truly embraced dyslexia. She was in an IB high school, and her final IB project was on dyslexia. When she applied to college, the Common App essay she wrote on how she overcame her struggles with dyslexia. So, you know, it's a journey that everyone needs to go on. I would say that in my experience in working with my kids and with my own, and with all my other students, most kids, and again, you decide, most kids are relieved to know that there's a reason why they struggle in reading. And it actually helps them to know it's not them. They certainly are bright and articulate and have so many strengths, but there's a reason why they struggle with reading. If you're considering talking to your kids about dyslexia, this is a great book, and I'm sorry something is cut off. This is a great book. And actually, one of my six-year-old students came marching in one day with this, and I didn't know about this book, but it's a great one. It was written by Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and it came out of her experience as a child with juvenile diabetes and her feeling of being left out, her feelings of being different. So this is a whole book on different learning differences or health differences, just kids being different. So my little 6-year-old student came in and she opened the book to this page and she said, "This is what I am." And it's a great page to introduce dyslexia to younger students. I'll read it in case you can't see it very well. "I'm Bianca and I have dyslexia, so I have to work really hard and take my time when I'm reading and writing words. Sometimes I use computer programs to help me. I love learning by doing things. My imagination is full of ideas, and I'm very proud at making art from the pictures that I see in my mind." Right? What a great thing for a younger child. If you haven't seen this little video, it's great for even younger and older kids. And I think they might be able to see themselves in this video. So hopefully this will work.
Your brain is amazing, and nobody else has one quite like it. Although everybody's brain looks the same, they all work differently from each other. Just as we all have different color skin, hair, and eyes, we all have a brain that's individual to us. Like a fingerprint, we have different personalities, tastes, strengths, and weaknesses. Our brains can even see and understand the world in different ways. One of those ways is called dyslexia, which affects how the brain handles information it sees and hears. Dyslexic people may find it difficult to match letters to sounds and to remember how to spell words. They may even see letters moving around when they're reading. They might have trouble telling left from right. Remembering lots of instructions can be especially hard. They may need more thinking time to remember the right word.
Chicken! No, wait. Duck!
As well as memorizing sequences. It may be difficult for them to hold a pencil and to write by hand. Even organizing themselves can be difficult. But everyone with dyslexia is different. It can affect how people feel about themselves. When they struggle with a task that other people find easy, they may feel frustrated, angry, or sad. Some dyslexic people try to hide their difficulties because they are worried about what others will think of them. However, thinking differently can be a really good thing. A person with dyslexia may be very good at seeing patterns and solving problems, imagining and rotating objects in their heads, telling stories and making people laugh, taking things apart, understanding how they work, and figuring out how to put them together again. Inventing, drawing, painting, and making things. Seeing the bigger picture. Dyslexic people can do a lot of things. They just might do them in a different way to how others would, and many of them have even become famous for it. There have been many famous dyslexic inventors, writers, scientists, business people, astronomers, paleontologists, actors, cooks, singers, artists, architects, and so on. Dyslexic people have changed the world. See dyslexia differently.
So that's just a great video. And I think kids could see themselves in a lot of those that were presented. It was presenting those things I was talking about, those co-occurring other things like ADHD, dysgraphia. So I think that's a great resource. Another great resource for older kids might be movies. You have to, as a parent, screen some of them before you show them. I can't remember which one, but one starts with really pretty raunchy language. So if you don't want your kids to see that, please screen these movies. This is an interesting movie, The Big Picture, Rethinking Dyslexia. And it's by Robert Redford's son, so the James Redford, about Robert Redford's. Some people might not know who Robert Redford is, but people in my generation, Robert Redford's a famous actor. And it's about Robert Redford's grandson, who is profoundly dyslexic. So hopefully this is going to work for me.
Dyslexic
If you can't spell and have messy handwriting, but your writing shows terrific imagination.
Art is definitely where I found my safety zone.
I think the dyslexia is positively correlated with creativity.
You can be the smartest person in the world. You can even be a Nobel Prize winner, but you still won't read quickly.
An unforeseeable conflict was blockers. Still don't know how to use them.
Patience to continue. The perseverance that is critical when you have dyslexia.
Even if you feel uncomfortable doing it, you have to push yourself to do whatever it takes. I might look really silly, but at the end of the day, I'm going to do well on the test because I have 500 flashcards sitting on my desk.
I realized the only way I can read is if I underline or highlight.
It's so important to just own it. To just totally own it.
Wow, I just wrote a 74-page document and I'm still reading it out. You know, what's next?
So just an idea of helping your kids. Oops, excuse me.
If you can't spell,
So just ideas on introducing dyslexia to your children. So to sum up, parent to parent, I'm a parent, you were parents. If you do nothing else but the first two, that's a great start. Learn all you can about dyslexia and any other co-occurring learning differences that might be going on in your child. And then just make sure your child reads. It's so important. The cost of not reading is just too high. And then the other points, go through, and again, you know your child best, but always know that the ultimate goal is for our children to be able to speak up for themselves, to ask for the help that they need. We as parents aren't going to be there in school with them. We want to be, but we're not there in school with them, and they need to be able to ask. And then finally, lastly, parent to parent. I was thinking the other day about the last time that I did this tips presentation was with my dear friend and Haida mentor and also a fellow mom of a dyslexic child, Betty Ishii. When we were done presenting this, we would always look in every parent's eye and tell them, with your love and support, your child will thrive and will succeed. And so although I can't look all of you in the eye, I want you to know that with your love and support, your child with dyslexia will thrive and will succeed. All right, thank you, Margaret. That's all I have.
So thank you so much, Lori. Let me get here we go. Oops, sorry. There we go. Thank you so much, Lori. I just love your reassuring manner in presenting, what can be very complex and sometimes, frankly, a little frightening information for parents. And I think you've done a great job just reassuring in a very loving, informative way. So appreciate that. There's a couple of points I want to make before I turn it over to Jen. Just a quick thing. When you mentioned about the reading and any kind of reading, it just reminded me of my daughter, who's now a young adult. And one thing she used to have me read was the long sail book. Remember when they used to have that yellow, like paper book? So I'd be like, tuna, whatever the price was at that time, 89 cents a can. We could only hope. Yeah, so we just would read through that and I'd be like, oh my gosh, but yeah, you're so right. Reading, any kind of reading, she was getting a lot of really rich context. And then the other thing you mentioned, IB, that's International Baccalaureate. Is that
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much again. I will turn it over to Jen, who will share a few things with you before we close.
Thank you. And thank you, Lori. And I love hearing that your daughter used dyslexia for her IB project and her college application, because I think about how many people she educated in that process on dyslexia and just how to get that out there. And I just also have to mention the British video, something that could be used for, my daughter used it in 5th grade to educate her class on dyslexia. And so that was a great way to start that conversation. So thank you so much. Wonderful tips, especially for parents starting out on this journey when it's so overwhelming.
Yep.
So thank you everybody for watching today's presentation. If you'd like to find out more about Haida, please visit the website, and Lori has brought you to it already. So there's so much incredible information there and resources. There's videos for teachers and parents on the YouTube channel, which you can find through the website. It's a great way to keep informed about what we have going on at Haida. You can sign up for the news and it will be emailed to you whenever new events are coming out. We are a nonprofit, so we appreciate your support. We try to offer presentations like this for free or at very low cost. So donations allow us to do this. So if you can support us, we would greatly appreciate it. Next slide.
Oh, sorry, I'm in charge of slides.
The Oregon branch created this great bracelet of "You are not alone." And we at Haida have created our own version. And if you're a student would like to receive one of these bracelets to know that they're not alone on this journey, please reach out to Haida and give us your name or their name and your address, and we will email one of them to them. There's also the self-advocacy card that we spoke about earlier. And if you would like one of those emailed also, please let us know. Next slide. Another website that Laura had brought to you earlier was the IDA website. Here you can go and there's all kinds of wonderful information. As she showed you, you can also become a member, and there's different membership levels. There's memberships for teachers and parents. I think there's actually a membership for teachers, a trial one that's free for the first year. So this is a great way to have additional information to support struggling readers. And here we have all our contact information. You'll find the YouTube channel that has presentations like the one you watched today, and other presentations for teachers and parents of struggling readers. We have our Facebook and Instagram page where we send out information of what Haida has going on and what will be presented in the future. If you want any direct information, you can email or call, and Margaret is incredible at supporting families in this journey. So please reach out if you need support. And I would just like to thank everybody for watching this presentation today on behalf of Haida, and for Margaret and Lori for all your support for students that are going through this journey along with their families. Thank you.
Thank you.